So today, Hannah, we're going to be talking about thoughts and how the way that we think about things can really influence how we feel. And so the goal here is to try to be more flexible in the way that we think about situations, the way we interpret things that come up for us. What we find is that people tend to think about situations that are troubling for them in really automatic or habitual ways. So what can happen is that, when you enter a situation that's challenging for you, say like a party, we've talked about before, that your mind automatically goes to the negative thoughts that you've thought hundreds of times before because you've really trained yourself to think that way. And so again, the goal here is to try to be more flexible, to think about what might be some other possibilities for interpretations of the situation. And so one way that we can try to get a little bit more flexible is using what we call sort of our disputing or challenging questions. So why don't you tell me a little bit about a situation that's come up recently in which you have felt a strong emotion, and I can show you how we use these questions to try to be a bit more flexible.
Okay, so it was actually like earlier today, I was in class, and like I've told you before, like I really hate participating in class, but this one class, it's like half your grade is participation, so it's always like the whole class, and today was no exception. You're like, I'm like agonizing over what I'm going to say, and today I just like sort of said something at the very end of the discussion, and I sort of like flubbed my words, and it was just like so awkward and embarrassing, and just like I'm like cringing thinking about it.
Yeah. So it sounds like this type of situation comes up pretty frequently for you, and it even brings up some pretty intense anxiety. Yeah, so let's talk about how the way that you might be interpreting or thinking about the situation may be contributing to some of that anxiety that you feel. So, when you're planning to participate, you're sitting in class, what's a thought that's going through your mind?
Well, like, I'm going to sound totally stupid.
Okay, I'm going to sound totally stupid. So I'm going to give you this list of disputing questions, and what I want you to do is to go through with your thought in mind, like I'm going to sound stupid, and fill in the blanks with that thought. So read them aloud to me.
Okay, do I know for certain that I'm going to sound stupid? I mean, no. I guess not. Like, I always kind of think I will, and sometimes I do, but not technically certain.
Okay, so we don't know for certain. So, okay, keep going.
Okay. Am I 100% sure that these awful consequences will occur? No. But they probably will, but not 100%.
Okay, so you can see that these questions are kind of getting at, what is the, how likely is what you're predicting? And what we find is that, people with anxiety disorders, people with emotional disorders, they tend to really overestimate or inflate the likelihood that something bad is going to happen. So you're sort of saying, like, I'm definitely going to say something stupid.
Yeah.
That's a kind of an error in logic that people fall into. We call it overestimation. You're overestimating the likelihood or the risk in this situation. Like, well, if I participate, I'm definitely going to sound stupid. And so, these questions, or at least these first two, really get at trying to build in a little wiggle room. How likely really is it? Or do you know for certain that you're going to sound stupid if you participate?
Yeah.
So why don't you jump down to question, I think it's question 7 on this list,
Okay,
read that
so how much does it feel like I'm going to sound stupid versus what is the true likelihood that I'm going to sound stupid?
Yeah.
Okay, it feels like 100% for sure.
Right. And so this goes back, to an earlier session that we had where we talked about, that 3-component model and the relationship between what you tell yourself and how you feel. And, when you're anxious in class and you're sitting there and your heart's beating, you're starting to get a bit hot, it makes the thoughts that you're having seem more true or more urgent. And so that's, this question really gets at that phenomenon as it's occurring.
Yeah.
But the second part of this question, so what's the real likelihood? I really like this one because it allows us to use like actual logic or math to really get to the bottom of, to take the emotions out of it really. So, okay, you've been in school for a while.
Yeah.
K through 11th grade.
Yeah.
So let's say you participated 100 times. It's probably way more than that, but 100 is really nice easy number for probability.
Okay.
So out of 100 times, how many times has there been any really like hard evidence to suggest that you said something stupid in class?
Oh my God. So pretty much never, but there was. So when I was a freshman, like same sort of deal. Like it was a class that required participation, and like I was super anxious at that point and like had to say something, but then it turns out that I answered like the wrong question, like the question before, and the professor, or I guess it was my teacher at the time, he was like, yeah, like we have moved on from that, and I would appreciate if you would stay here with us. And I was like, oh my God. And that was like so, and like obviously that was stupid that I didn't realize, but like that was the worst.
Yeah, that sounds really tough. So, I mean, I'm not going to deny that it definitely was. You did get some evidence there that you were off task, and that probably felt pretty embarrassing when that happened. But what I really want to highlight is that was one time out of 100 times. So that means 99% of the time, there's been no evidence that you've said something stupid.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So how about in class today? So in class today, you said, well, I participated at the end of class, and I felt like, oh my gosh, what I said was so stupid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I stumbled over my words, and then the professor was like, essentially, like, just didn't even respond and kind of just like called on the person next to me, and it was just like so obvious that it was because what I had said was like so dumb.
Yeah. So okay, so maybe not as clear cut in that situation. It's a little bit more ambiguous than the teacher that was like, please stay on task, Hannah. Which maybe, I'll give you that one. But this one sounds a little bit more ambiguous. So there's a question on there, are there any other explanations or possibilities? So any other explanations or possibilities why the teacher might have moved on that's not what I said was stupid and not worth responding to?
Well, I mean, it was like right at the end of the class, so it could have just been like that she was trying to save time.
Yeah, so maybe, other people have their hands up and there's like a couple minutes left of class and I really need to hit all these people. I don't have time to really engage with what you said.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean what you said was stupid, it just means there are maybe these other factors.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, again, like the point here is to try to be a bit more flexible and to use these questions as a guide to help, to poke some holes in some of those automatic thoughts. How does it feel to be going through this? Does this seem believable to you?
Well, I mean, I guess it's technically believable, but then it's still like, well, what if I did sound stupid, right?
Yeah.
Like, that would be bad.
Yeah, so that's a really great point that you bring up. And I want you to flip over to the next page in the book. And that brings us to basically another sort of thinking trap or error in logic. So if the first one is this overestimating or inflating the likelihood that something bad is going to happen, the second one is what we call catastrophizing. And so by the name, what do you think catastrophizing
I mean, just like making a mountain out of a molehill.
Right, so it's blowing things out of proportion. It's basically telling yourself it would be the end of the world if this happened and I wouldn't be able to handle it. So I want you to take that same thought, I'll say something stupid, and I want you to fill it in with these questions.
Okay. So what is the worst that could happen and how bad is that? So the worst that could happen is like I'm totally humiliated and like everybody can tell A, that I'm humiliated, and B, that I'm stupid, and I'm just like, like I never show my face there again.
Yeah, so okay, so why don't we take the first part of that, so feeling humiliated.
Yeah.
Ever felt humiliated before? Ever felt embarrassed?
Yeah, like every time I participate in this class.
Yeah, and does it stay at that really intense level?
Well, what do you mean? Like, yeah, it stays there probably till the end of the class.
So how are you feeling now? Now that it's been a couple hours since the class.
I mean, it's kind of like one of those, like, you look back on it and cringe type of things.
Yeah, so, okay, so in terms of, like, the absolute worst thing that could happen is that when you think about it, you kind of feel a little bit of the remnants of some embarrassment, but then you kind of can move on from it. Is that sort of...
Yeah, I guess it's not like I feel embarrassed like the whole day or anything like that.
Yeah, so I mean, again, the point here is to build some flexibility. So your sort of automatic or habit thought is, it would be humiliating, it would be the worst thing ever. Yeah. And this is really to create a little bit of wiggle room with that. It's actually, wait, what actually will happen? And it's that, okay, like, I'll look back on this and I'll feel like maybe a little red in my cheeks, but then I'll move on to the next thing. So we're not trying to say, oh, it would be delightful if I sounded stupid in class, but we are trying to deflate the worry that it would just be the end of the world to an extent. So why don't you go on to the next question?
Okay. If that happened, how could I cope with it, and how would I handle it? I mean, how could I cope with it? Like, I mean, I guess I'd just like try to not sound stupid the next time, or.
Yeah, so you could tell yourself that there's, you've got these participation points, so there's always an opportunity to try again the next time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so, to kind of summarize with these two thinking traps that we've got. So we've got overestimation, which is you inflating the likelihood that the bad thing is definitely going to happen. Like, I'll definitely sound stupid. And the catastrophizing is telling yourself, it would be the end of the world if I felt stupid. And, I think, they go hand in hand. So you want to, in summary, when you're having some of these automatic thoughts, whether it's about class,